guys, and welcome back to Reading Club. So today I'm going to read you Daisy and the Trouble with Burglars, chapter 21 to the last chapter. Chapter 21. The trouble with borrowing a packet of Doritos is it's better not to ask first if you're meant to be in bed, because your mom might think you want to eat them. It's better just to creep out of bed, creep downstairs, creep into the kitchen, borrow them really quietly, and then creep back upstairs to your bedroom again. Luckily, Mom and Mrs. Pike were so busy talking, they didn't notice me creep past the lounge door or creep back. It wasn't until about 10:05 that Mom finally noticed they were missing. She wouldn't have noticed at all if Mrs. Pike hadn't needed to go to the loo. The trouble with Mrs. Pike needing to go to the loo is she had to walk past my bedroom to get to it, which is why she started threading on all the Doritos. The trouble with threading on a Dorito is it makes a really loud crunch. The trouble with threading on loads of Doritos is it makes loads of really loud crunches. Plus, it makes the person who's doing all the crunching go back downstairs and tell my mom. When Mom came up to the stairs and found Doritos sprinkled all over the landing carpet, she made some really loud noises of her own. Then, when she found Doritos all over my bedroom carpet too, she went totally doolary. When I told her that the burglars would be trying to steal my crime detection notebook tonight and that I needed to be able to hear their crunches when they came, she said if she heard me mention burglars one more time today, she would ground me for the rest of the summer holidays. She said that the chances of a burglar burgling our house were rarer than an egg hatching into an elephant, and there was absolutely no need or excuse whatsoever for covering our carpets with Doritos or pickled onions or marbles or tripwires or anything. So would I please go to sleep? So I said I would, but I couldn't because I couldn't stop thinking about burglars. The trouble with thinking about burglars is the harder you try not to think about them, the more you do. I was still thinking about burglars when Mrs. Pike went home, which was at about 11 o'clock. I was still thinking about burglars when Mom turned all the downstairs lights off, which was at about 11:15. The trouble with Mom turning off all the lights downstairs is when she did, the house got really, really dark. Darker than the cover of darkness evening. And then when I closed my eyes really tight, it got even darker still. When my mom came into my bedroom to check that I was asleep, I decided to make her think I was, because I didn't want to be grounded. But I wasn't, because no one could possibly get to sleep if they knew there were burglars around. No one could possibly just go upstairs, go to the loo, go to the bathroom, wash their face, clean their teeth, get into bed, and fall straight to sleep if they knew there were burglars around, except my mom. Chapter 22. I could not believe it when Mom started snoring. Not just small snores either, great big hippopotamus snores. She's only been in bed about 2 minutes, and she was already fast asleep. I've been in bed about 3 hours, and I was still wide awake. When I realized that my mom was asleep but I wasn't, the house seemed to get even darker still, and quieter and shadowier. I started to see shadows moving around in my bedroom, which was scary. I started to see dark shapes over by my curtains, which was even scarier. But then, just when my eyes were starting to get a bit tired, the scariest thing of all happened. It was scarier than a shadow. It was scarier than a shape. It was the sound of a creaking gate. The trouble with hearing the sound of a creaking gate at 11:30 at night is it makes your pajamas go all tingly, especially when the gate is creaking right outside your house. At first, I thought it was the gate of my house that must be opening. But then I remembered we didn't have a gate because it had fallen off the other day when I was swinging on it. Which meant it must have been somebody else's gate instead. But whose creaking gate was it? And why was it creaking open under the cover of darkness at 11:30 at night? By the time I crept all the way over to my bedroom curtains, I was almost trembling. By the time I felt brave enough to peep through the curtains and look outside, I was almost shaking. But when I looked across the road, I nearly died of shock. because there, in the orangey streetlight, creeping creepily around the windows of the house on the opposite side of the road, was a human shadow. Not just a human shadow either, a human shadow with an actual torch. The trouble with seeing a human shadow with an actual torch is it makes you nearly poo yourself and run to your mom's bedroom. "Mom, Mom, Mom, wake up," I said. "There's a burglar trying to break into the house across the door." The trouble with trying to wake your mom up when she's snoring like a hippopotamus is it's really hard. The trouble with trying to wake your mom up when she's snoring like a dinosaur is it's absolutely impossible. So I had to take charge myself. The trouble with taking charge yourself is at first you're not quite sure what to do. When I ran back into my bedroom and peeped through the curtain again, I knew I had to do something and fast, because the torch beam was shining all over the house across the road now. When it turned and flashed in my direction, I closed the peephole and my curtains tight. But even though the tiniest of gaps, I could still see what the shadow figure was doing. He was looking for a way to get in. His torch was shining. He was shining his torch along the downstairs window ledges and all over the lock on the front door, including the letterbox and the front steps and the flower pots. I didn't know whether to gulp or gasp. I mean, an actual burglar with an actual torch was trying to work out how to break into the actual house across my actual road, under the cover of actual darkness, while I was actually watching. There was only one thing I could do. I had to call the police right away. The trouble with calling the police right away is I need to use the house phone. The trouble with using the house phone is it meant I needed to go downstairs on my own, in the dark, under the cover of darkness. I wanted to turn the lights on, but then I realized that if the burglar saw the lights in my house go on, he would probably run away. So I kept the lights off, did a gulp and a gasp, grabbed my first and second favorite teddy, and went downstairs in the dark on my own. The trouble with ringing 999 is I've never done it before, which meant that as soon as the 999 lady answered, I tried to tell her everything really, really fast. "Quick, there's a burglar trying to break into the house across the road, and he's armed with a torch, and he might have a gun. I think he might be Russian. I think he might have a limp, and he's definitely got shadows, and if you don't come quick, he'll steal all the things out of the house because the person who lives there are on late, and if you don't come and catch me fast, he might burgle up the next me because I've got loads of things to worry about, plus my mom is asleep, so we're gonna make a capture because he first been CCPs. The trouble with saying everything too fast is the 999 lady makes you stop and take a deep, deep breath. Then say everything all over again, only really slowly. Plus, you first of all have to tell her your name and where you live. Plus, you need to tell her the address of the house that the burglar is burgling, which makes you really desperate because if you're doing everything slowly, the burglar might be getting away. When the police cars screeched into our road with their blue lights flashing and their sirens ironing, things got really exciting. In fact, things got so exciting, loads of people who lived in our road came out in their dressing gowns to see what was happening. Mom didn't. She was still snoring like a dinosaur and dribbling. As soon as the police cars screeched to a stop outside the house across the road, about 6 policemen jumped out, raced through the creaky gate, and then bombed straight down the path and into the house through the open front door. About 8.5 seconds later, 6 policemen dragged the burglar out of the house through the creaky gate and held him up under the streetlights. That's when I closed my curtains really quickly, because that's when I realized it wasn't a burglar at all. Or even a him. It was Mrs. Pike with handcuffs on. Chapter 23. The trouble with people knocking on your door at 20 to 12 at night is you really don't want to answer it, especially if you know that the person knocking is a policeman. So I didn't answer it. I pretended there was no one in. But after about 27 knocks and quite a few shouts through our letterbox, I decided that I really would have to wake my mom. So I did. The trouble with throwing a glass of water over your mom's face is it doesn't just wake her up, it makes her quite wet and spluttery. When I told her that there was someone knocking on her front door and I thought it might be a policeman, I don't think she really understood what I was saying, which is probably why she forgot to put on her dressing gown. When she opened the door and found Mrs. Pike standing on a doorstep wearing a proper metal handcuffs and standing next to a policeman with a very serious face, all she could do was stare. The policeman told my mom that Mrs. Pike claimed to be our neighbor and said she had been asked by the people who lived across the road to feed their cat while they were away on holiday. Mrs. Pike said that she had trouble finding the key with her torch, but when she had found the key and finally got into the kitchen, she had been jumped on by 6 police officers. Apparently, cat biscuits had gone everywhere, which was bad. But then things got worse, because then the policeman told my mom that it was me who had rung the police in the first place, which meant it was me who had got Mrs. Pike handcuffed, and me who had woken everyone in the street. At first, I thought Mom might be too tired to get too cross with me, but I think making her wet 3 times in one day might have helped to wake her up. "Why didn't you wake me earlier, Daisy?" she shouted. "If you woken me earlier, instead of calling the police, all this silly burglar nonsense could have been avoided." When I said I couldn't wake her up because she was snoring like a dinosaur, she got even crosser. Then, when I told the policeman that she had been drinking wine with Mrs. Pike and that when my mom drinks wine, she always snores like a dinosaur, her eyes nearly popped out of her head and she was so cross. Luckily, because of the policeman standing on the doorstep, she couldn't shout at me any louder. So she sent me to my room instead. Trouble is, just as I was about to go up the stairs, another policeman walked down our garden path and asked my mom about the car that was parked outside our house. When the policeman told my mom that he noticed our car didn't have any car tax, she said she was very sorry and that she would do something about it first in the morning. Then she said she hadn't been driving a car since her car tax had run out. But I remembered that she had, so I reminded her about her trip to IKEA and all the other places she'd been to. I'm not sure whose face turned crossest after that, my mom's or the policeman's. Half an hour later, our car got picked up and towed away by a special police pickup lorry with flashing orange lights. I watched it all happen from my beanbag before my mom came back into my bedroom and took my beanbag away. Apparently, she's going to give it to a charity shop. And if I don't start behaving myself, she's going to give me to a charity shop too. Gulp. I've decided not to be a detective anymore. Well, that's the end of this channel and this book. Well, I think it was a very nice book, and I hope you'd enjoyed my readings of it. And if you did, please click many likes and subscribe Reading Club. I'll come back later with a new book and a new interesting channel. Bye, everybody.